Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are going to be doing this tattered lace pop-up box card, and I'm also going to be using this windmill die that comes in the pop-up box die kit. So using the tab 2 on my multi-purpose platform and also the extended acrylic plate, because although it will go through my Sizzix and it will go through your smaller machines on the width, you do need an extended length on the actual platforms themselves. So I've put down my multi-purpose platform tab 2, then my extended acrylic plate, then a piece of cardstock, then my die cut side down, and finally my second extended acrylic plate, and then I've just run that through my Sizzix machine. I'm just putting that to one side, and there you can see it just pops straight out, and we've got there the cut lines and also our score lines, which hopefully you can just catch in the light here. Now we're going to cut out our layers and panels for our box. So I'm starting with the single part that's the double height, as it were, and I'm picking out the largest die in that section and then one down from that, because I want to mat down sort of the box layer, then the next largest layer, then another layer. So then we're going to get the square pieces and doing the same thing there, picking out the largest one and then the next largest one. So that's going to sit there, and then the next largest one is going to create our mat. So we're going to again have that nice mat and layering of our box, then one colour of cardstock, and then our final piece of cardstock in the middle there. So for our box today, I'm going to be using the Anna Griffin Callisto collection. I think that's a really fun collection, and it's got a real beachy theme, which is what we're going for here today. So I'm going to be starting off cutting out my longer rectangle pieces, and for this, because it's a smaller die, we can go back to my smaller platforms. So I'm using here my magnetic platform, then my acrylic plate, then I've got a couple of pieces of cardstock that I've cut out from the Anna Griffin pack there, and then I've just worked out which layer I want what colour, and then popped those dies onto the cardstock, cut side down, followed by the final acrylic plate, and then we're just popping that through my machine to cut it out. And as you can see, it cuts out beautifully, just one pass and out it pops. And doesn't that look nice together? So now we're just looking at our square dies here, and again I'm just working out which is the bigger one of the two, and therefore which one I want on what colour. And then I just realised that actually the cardstock being double-sided, I actually want the other side of the same piece of cardstock for my other die, so I just cut a little piece off for one side and then flipped it over to do the other. You could actually have put both dies on the same side, but it doesn't, although it doesn't technically emboss, it does leave a little line, and I think it just makes it look the right way round. So I personally prefer to cut it on the side that is the right side rather than do what I was just saying. So as you can see, I've just cut that out, and it's cut out beautifully as well, and just grabbing that piece and the other piece and popping those two together, and you can see just how nice that looks together. So as you can see, I've cut out all of my layers here, and I just popped them in some sort of order. I wanted to mix and match the sort of sandy colours with the sky blue and the sea blue, as it were, and just mix that all up. But I also had to cut a few extra layers, which you'll see what they're for in due course, but you need the 3 extra squares and 1 extra of the rectangle. So just before we leave our machine, we're just going to die cut some of the extra elements that I need. So we're starting off here. I'm going to pick out the windmill, which I think is going to be fun to use. Then I'm also going to use the little kite And then we also need, for our pop-up box, we need the little supports or the struts that go across the pop-up box to make the actual pop-up box. And finally we want the long piece there to create the post for our windmill and kite. So just putting those on various pieces of card. I'm using the cream cardstock for our little supports stroke struts on our pop-up box, so it matches our base pop-up box colour, but you don't have to do that, but that's what I wanted to do. And it's a nice strong cardstock, so it gives a nice strength for me to add elements to. It's not going to bend or be weak, so I think that's going to be great. So this is our windmill, and you can just see on there's some little embossed lines. It's quite hard to catch in the light. And there's our little post for our windmill, and there's our little strut, and you could see there on that one that also had some embossed lines so that we can do some folding. So now we're on our actual pop-up box, and we're just going to start putting in all our folds. So I'm just finding those embossed lines and then just gently bending the card where those embossed lines are, and then going over it when I finally get it folded with my tool. So as you can see, look, we just gently bend it till the card naturally finds that embossed line. If you try and force it on the embossed line, you'll find it just creases in the wrong place, and then just go over it with your bone folder to finalize that crease. So you can see again, just making sure it lines up straight as well at the bottom there, and then just going across with the bone folder. And if you allow the card just to gently bend, you can see I'm just sort of curving it and bending it lightly, it will naturally find that embossed line. If you try and force it, it will bend and crease in the wrong place. And there we just, that last one on there of the upright ones. And then going to our little struts, you can see that, as I say, there's two little creases at each end. You want to make it into a little zigzag, so one going one way and one going the opposite, to make almost like a little stair or a Z. So just then crease that with your bone folder just to make sure it's nice and tightly folded. And again, just making sure that they're square on those little end pieces, and then do the same on our second piece. And there you can see we've got our two little pieces there done. And now we're going to go back to our box, and we're just going to fold over our top pieces there that create the flaps. Now there's one of those that is tall and it doesn't have a fold, so just make sure you don't accidentally fold that. And again, just bending the card lightly till it naturally finds that crease that you've put in with the die, and then using your bone folder just to sharpen that up. And when you fold it over, as you can see, I'm just making sure that the corners match the bottom of our box there, so everything's nice and level, and that creates almost like the little skirt around our pop-up box. I'm just checking that all fits together nicely. And there we have our little box all folded, ready to go. So now I've just added red tape to our little struts there, and you can see they're on opposite sides, so make sure that it's on the side where the fold folds away from it. And there I'm also then on that edge piece of our box, I'm just adding some of the red tape as well. Now before we can put our box together, I'm going to put our struts, one side of our struts in position. So I'm just taking these little red tapes off. They can be a bit of a pain to get the actual red part off. What you need to do is just make sure they're really rubbed down hard, and then use your pokey tool just to lift them up, and then you'll find they're quite static as well, so they can be a bit of a pain to get off, but they are worth it because you want that strength. So then we want to make sure that we're putting that on the side, so I'm just folding the box up and then looking to see where the side is, just to make sure that I'm putting it in the right place. And then I'm sticking that down at the front, but the top of that side So you can see I'm just lining that up. Now you could put that further down if you want. I wanted to put it up the top there because I think that works well when you're adding the additional pieces. So again, with the next piece, make sure it's the same way round as your front one. So just checking that, and then taking off my red tape top part again, and then we'll stick that down behind the first one. Again, as I say, making sure that the little foldy piece is facing the same direction as the first one. So just checking that I'm happy with that, and then just pressing that down. And again, you can see now why putting it at the top makes it easier, because I know that they're absolutely level. Plus, when you add the elements to it, that's going to make it easier as well, because they're going to be at the top and your elements aren't going to disappear behind. So now we're going to actually put the box together. So I'm just taking my red tape off that side piece, and then I'm folding it all flat. This is the easiest way to put this together. Don't try and put it together with it all made into a box shape. Fold it down flat, line the two edges at the bottom there up and the corner piece at the top edge there, and then just making sure it's all straight on that edge, and just line that up and push it down like you saw me do there. If you try and do it when it's a box shape, it's just really hard. So now we're going to be putting the other sides of our little struts on. So we're going to take off our red tape. Now I've seen this done a lot, and I think it seems to be often made more complicated than it needs to be. So all you need to do is just pop that piece in so it's level with the top, and then close the box very lightly. You can see I'm just going in there, not to press it down, but just to make sure it's staying level with the top, because that's the only bit I need to worry about. And then by closing the box like that, it will automatically position that piece of card in the right place on the opposite side. It has to, it's mechanics, it cannot get it wrong. The only bit you need to worry about is making sure it's the same height. So again, just popping that in, see, so I'm making sure it's level, and then I'm closing that box over, and then look, it just popped up a bit, so I'm pushing it down, and then I'm holding that while I just close that box shut, and boom, that is perfect. So you don't have to sit there trying to fiddle to make sure it's even, and then closing it and going, oh, it's not quite right. Ta-da! I was going. It will work perfectly if you do it that way. So trust me, it's really simple. Okay, so now we're going to put together our layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put all the actual layers on top of the bottom layer before I put them on the box. So I'm just going to use my wet glue there and just stick that down, and you can see there's just a nice amount of a gap between each layer, which is really good, because sometimes you get too big a gap on dies when they're matte and layer, and I think this works really well. And then I'm going to do the same with the square one here. So again, just blobbing a bit of my wet glue on the back and popping that layer on top. And I love using the wet glue because it gives a really strong hold, but it also gives me a bit of time to wriggle that into position when you put it down, so that really helps. So then I've done all the rest, and now we get to those cuts that I said you'll see what they're for. So I'm gluing these on, and the reason we wanted them, we created all the layers for the box that are showing, as it were, but when the box is folded shut like this, when it goes in the envelope, you're going to see underneath our little skirt, as I called it. So I'm just putting one single layer of patterned cardstock. This is a lovely kind of glittery cardstock that was in that Anna Griffin kit, and so I'm just popping those underneath on all the skirts. So there's 3 sides to that, because obviously the back one, which you could leave plain if you wanted to, but the back one is that long oblong. So I'm going to put that glittery piece on the back there as well, just to make that pretty, but you could, as I say, leave that plain, so that you could leave it for somebody to put a sentiment on or to write on. I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to add just one plain square of cardstock in the cream colour, just so that that gives somebody somewhere to write on this little pop-up box. And I think that just gives it a nice finished feel when you just add that. You might think, well, it's a bit of a waste because you hardly see that sort of card under the skirt, but I think it just finishes it off nicely. So just pop that piece down, and you can see now where that's going. You can see it's just under that skirt, so that kind of makes more sense. And then I'm just going to grab a piece of the cream cardstock, as I say, and just put a little square. And again, you could do another oblong so it's nice and long, but I wanted to see that lovely glittery cardstock, so I left it just as a small square to write on. So now I'm going to start sticking on my panels. So we're starting with the one on the inside at the back there. Now the reason I do all of these panels afterwards, after I've stuck the box together, because you might think, well, it'd be easier to do it beforehand, is because you've got the little tab that you stick down. So if you did the layer at the back there before you stuck the box together, you would find that the little tab that puts the box together would show, because it would be on top of your back oblong panel. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit hard when you're not sort of able to see it, but really it is better to put these on afterwards. And as you can see, you can put them down flat, so it's not difficult. Okay, so that's the last one. So I've done all the underneath pieces on my box there, and then all the tops of my flaps. So that's them all decorated with paper. So now we're going to start making my elements to go on my cards. So here is my windmill. So what you want to do is cut along with a pair of scissors those embossed lines that you can see on your windmill die that you cut out. So just cut along, but not right to the centre. You want to leave it, you can see it's about 1/2 centimetre in from the centre. You can see where the embossed line actually kind of stops, so it's got a guide there for you. And then we're just going to make those holes a little bigger. There's a hole in the centre, and there's a hole in one side of each of those little pieces that we've just cut. So it's just in one corner of each of those. So I'm just making those a little bigger because we're going to need to put a bit brad through those. So I just want to make that a little easier to do. Now, because I've used card, it is a little thick. So what I'm going to do, just to make it easier for me, is I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to each, just one side, so the side with the hole, so that when we have to bend that over, it just makes it a little easier because some of the curve is already there for us. So then we're going to get our little post, as I called it. It's just that thin piece of card that we had, and I'm just adding a little hole in the top end of that myself using my pokey tool, and that's because that's going to go on the back of our little windmill, so we need to put our brad through that. So then back to our windmill. To construct it, what we're going to do is we're going to fold that or curve that one corner over that has the hole, and then the next one, bringing them all those into the center. And we've got our little brad here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put our brad through each hole and then, so I'm actually, rather than, because what you can do is you can curve them all to the center and just put the brad straight through, but because it's quite tiny, what I found was it was easier to put the brad through one, then the next one. As you can see, I'm just grabbing that next one, popping the brad through, and then I'll take the next little corner, pop the brad through that one, and then the final one, and through the middle of the actual windmill as well. So we're doing the final little wing, as it were, and then, which is getting a bit harder because obviously it's less room. And I think what I decided to do is just push that across towards the center and then pop it through that and the center of our windmill all in one go. And I found that worked better for me in the end. But I'd got it on all three by then, and then the fourth one, you know, it's a little bit of a fiddle, but it's not difficult. You just have to fiddle around. So I'm just fiddled, and then I managed to pop it through that final fourth piece and that back of our windmill, the center of the windmill. And then I'm just getting my little post, and I'm going to pop that over, or the brad through that hole as well. And then we're just going to open that split pin of the brad to lock that in place. and as you can see, it's pretty simple to do. I probably could have made it easier for myself by using paper, but I wanted to use the same pattern as I got for my whole card. But I think that looks absolutely stunning, and I love the contrast of the two colours there. Okay, so now to the next element for our pop-up card. I wanted to make one of these lovely beach hut cabin things. So I actually pre-did this one before the video, and I cut it out 4 times to make this. And I cut it out in the cream, the blue, the pattern cardstock, and also the blue again to put on the back. And I basically just cut it all up, and as you can see, I sort of decoupaged different elements to create a really dimensional piece there, and I think it's come out really well. I really like that. And you can see there how I've just taken that very thin piece on the edge there, and it just gives it a little bit of dimension. And then just to hide a little bit of tape etc that I had on the back, I just cut another piece and added that to the back as well. And then to our final die cut element, it's the little kite that we cut out, and as you can see, I just added some little pieces to make the wood sort of cross part for the kite there, and then I added it with a brad to the post. So I'm now just adding some baker's twine to the little post there. So I'm just putting some glue underneath the kite there and between the post, and I'm just popping the top of my twine in there and gluing that in. And then I'm just going to create some twirls and swirls down my post and around it, just so that it looks like it's got string coming off our kite. So I'm just adding bits of glue to the string and to the post, and as I say, just creating these little swirls, and I just think that looks really effective and just finishes it off really nicely. So that's our little kite done. So that's all our little die cut elements all completed, ready to add with some extra elements to our card here. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is just having a look and working out exactly where we've got space, because when you close the card and you put it, say, in here on a 6x6 envelope, you have a certain amount of space around where you can see there's a whole sort of square element there that you have got a gap, so your pieces that you add can kind of go outside the box literally, so you can just take advantage of that. So I'm just using my envelope in the background there as a guide to give me an idea of exactly where to position my little kite, windmill, and I'm just popping that down. Now I accidentally popped it on my little strut there, so I had to take it out and pop it back in. But being the kite being quite 3D, you're not probably going to actually get to put it in that 6x6 envelope. You're probably going to need to make a box card. But if you were just using normal flat elements and just popping them onto the different layers of your card here, then you'd get it in that envelope fine. Now as it happens, you can see I'm using some stickers from that same collection from Anna Griffin, and they're all 3D as well, so there's no way it's going to fit inside this envelope, but it is being used as a guide so that when I do a 6x6 box envelope, I know that it'll fit in there. Now what I did was, because they're stickers, I stuck them down onto the blue cardstock, and then I just did a rough cut round, because obviously part of this is going to be overhanging the card, so we don't want the part that's overhanging and open to the elements, as it were, being sticky. So I thought that it would be easier to stick it onto the piece of card and then use my glue to stick that element down onto the actual box. So again, just using my envelope as a guide for position, and then opening the box as if it would, how it would look when it was up and sitting on someone's mantel shelf. Then you kind of get a real good idea of where to put things. So the next piece is my lovely little cabin, and that's the first piece that's going on our little strut, as I call it. So I'm just double checking everything's stuck down, and then I'm actually going to put the adhesive, and now I'm using my wet adhesive again, and I'm just going to put that on the actual strut because I know it goes across the whole thing, and then I can just put my little hut on the strut. And I'm just sticking that down. Now obviously be careful when you press it on there when you've not folded the box, because it's not, you know, got anything behind it. So really you need to give it more of a press when you close it across like this. You can put a bit more pressure on, but you need to keep opening and closing it, because in case any glue's escaped. So I'm just playing around with some of the elements here. I've got like a little suitcase, and I've got my little kite, so I'm just having a play as to where I want it. So I think that looks good. So again, I've just added some of the blue cardstock on the back of that, because that was a sticker, and I've decided to put this little suitcase straight on, but to the right hand side, so it gives a little bit of space for my kite. And so as you can see, it's kind of got a beach kind of travel theme to it, with the postcard at the back, the little suitcase, the windmill, the beach hut. So I think that's got, and the colours obviously are quite beachy as well, so I think that looks really cool. So now we're just going to add my little kite. So again, just working out, yeah, that's roughly where it's going to be with the adhesive. So then just popping that on the back of our little stick there, or post, whatever you want to call it, and then just sticking that down. And you don't need that much to stick, to be honest. It doesn't take a lot. It's pretty good. It sticks and stays in position quite easily, especially if you're using a good glue. And then I decided, I really thought that I needed a second postcard, because it was not really showing enough behind my hut. So as you can see, this is where I stuck it down onto the blue. I've just cut it out, and then I'm just going to work out where I need it. So I'm just going to pop it down the edge there. I'm just working out where the glue goes to make sure I get it on the right part. It's very easy to get it wrong, especially when actually I could do with some 3D foam there in a way, but I've just decided to go with the wet glue, because I've got that movement. It gives me that little bit of time. As you can see, I can still fiddle around with it even now, and it will be enough stuck on the second postcard for it to hold in place without the 3D foam anyway. So now this is a sticker, a lovely shell, but because it's going straight onto that piece of card, I didn't need to put it onto another piece of card first and use glue. I just used it as a sticker and popped that straight down onto that side panel. And then I'm going to go over to the other side, and I've got another little shell. This one says sand and surf on it, slightly smaller, but I think that's all part. There's a couple of little sets of stickers that go with that collection, and I'm just looking there how to position those. Now that was one long sticker, and I just chopped it so that it went into two pieces, so I could have one above the other. So we're just going to again pop this down onto a piece of cardstock, and I'm going to have to do that with both of them, and then cut them out, because as you can see, there's going to be quite a bit of overhang. So I'm just fiddling around here, seeing how it's going to fit. And it says down by the sea, and I just think that's going to look really, really nice on the front there. And you can see you can go quite bold. Now what I didn't realise at the time was I actually went the wrong way with the sea. I should have gone across, so the A and the E were stuck down onto my piece of card there, onto my little flap, and then you'll see why in a minute. And then when this piece is fine, but you'll see what happens because the A is overhanging. When I close my box, it's actually making my box card too wide for my 6x6 envelope. It's not really a big deal. All I'll do is make an A5 box envelope, but you know, if I'd have just gone the other direction with it, it would have worked fine. So I should have done what I've done all the way along, which was just test it by folding it flat before I added that last piece on. But otherwise I think, you know, it looks fabulous. There we go, you can see what I mean now. If I'd have gone the other direction, you can see it would have fitted still in my 6x6. But I think it looks so amazing. I really like it. I love how it turned out. I hope you like it too. I just think it has come out really well. I have to be honest, I wasn't that sure about it when I got the die from Tattered Lace. I wasn't really sure what I'd think of it. It's not my usual kind of thing, but I'm really pleased with it, and I love the way the different layers have gone. I guess you could add more than 2 as well in the middle there. You could add a couple, maybe. I would think you could probably get away with 3. I don't think you could do more than 3 in there. So I hope you've enjoyed making this card with me. I hope you like the finished result. I think it turned out absolutely gorgeous. I'm really pleased with it, as I say. And here's a couple of pictures to show you the card a little bit more detail for you. But if you do want to see even more, do make sure you click on the link and pop over to my blog post, because there'll be loads more photos and information on there for you as well. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now. Bye.